Well, guys, welcome to the Contractor Commute. We're excited to have Brad Leavitt of AFT Construction with us today. I have followed Brad on Instagram and seen all of his amazing projects he works on. He's these storybook, crazy, expensive, really, really cool jobs. Definitely a lot we can learn from him. Definitely excited to have you with us, Brad. How are you?
Very good. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Fantastic. So walk us a little bit through your journey because you've had AFT Construction for, I think, 11 years, you've said. And so early on, you started off just doing whatever projects came your way, it sounds like, and kind of walk us through the early days of AFT Construction.
Whew, those are grim days, let me tell you. I mean, it definitely it definitely wasn't what you see now. Early on, I think like most of us, it's even though I had prior experience, I had an education, I've been in the trades, I worked for a large general contracting company. Um, the reality is you still have to earn your stripes, as they say, right? You have to start somewhere, you have to build a reputation, you have to build systems and personnel and show qualifications that you can actually compete, and doing a project of significant magnitude. And so the reality is early on, it was a true struggle. I tried to do it the hard way where I was just out there, call it knocking doors, just trying to find any lead, doing a powder bathroom, doing a kitchen remodel, doing a deck. We did a renovation from, there was actually a gentleman I worked with for a long time who's a great friend of mine who ended up becoming a personal inspector, like a home inspector, during the recession and started his own home inspecting company. And there was this small house for this family that just had relocated and needed some punch work items. I was doing that. I mean, so it's like any little thing you can do. And, it definitely was not what people see at AFT today for sure.
So early on, whenever you were building decks and doing powder rooms and all those other things, were you subcontracting out labor still, or were you self-fulfilling, or what was the team structure then?
That's a great question. There's a little bit of a dependent on the project. So I'll give you one example. As we were doing, I was doing a loft for someone. So you kind of walk into their house and they had this really tall living room. It was like dead space. So you walk in, it's just this living room, 24-foot ceiling, and they're like, we want to put in a loft. And so I had a framer come out and do the structural components of that, but I was the super managing that. But I'm running the electrical because that's my background. So I self-perform the electrical, I self-perform the installation. I did that in college. So I was self-performing a bunch of the trades I could. Um, and then of course, subbed out the drywall. So it was a little hybrid on some of the projects I do, depending on how small they were. I had bags on at the time. I'd be in the attic pulling wire, and it's not very generous in the summer of Phoenix to be in the attic. So that was rough. Um, so yeah, it's just the old school hard way. I mean, it's really tough. But as I had some bigger projects, and at the time, I did a kitchen remodel that was like 160 grand. It was like my first big break, and most of it I subcontracted out. So it did vary, but it definitely wasn't like the operation we have today for sure.
Yeah.
Was there a lesson in all of that at that time? Obviously tough. You're putting in the hours, you're out there in the field, you're in the office, you're doing everything, you're wearing 20 hats. What would you say that common theme of well, this was the thing I walked away from with those tough moments of I guess as you look back, what are the things you're grateful for? Where's that moment you're just being like, I'm glad I learned that from those moments?
Well, I think it's like anything in life. I mean, it's easy to look back and not take things for granted because you remember where you started. I mean, I think that's just one-on-one for most of us, just living life. But to answer your question, Ben, that I think is really valuable is that I there came a point, 6 years in business when I remember thinking, can people make money in construction? And so, I'm doing these jobs like killing myself, and margins are super tight, not making very much. And I'm rethinking my career, my life choices, like what am I doing? And it's really where, I don't want to say double down, but I really found the importance of understanding my business and understanding financials and understanding systems and how to hire and how to train and how to put myself in a position where structurally as a company I have a business set up that I could actually win some of these better jobs, that I
Mhm.
could actually stand in front of a client and say, no, we are sophisticated enough to run this project. You can take a chance on us, which then allows us to hire even more personnel and put the
Sure.
right people, in the right seat on the bus. And so I think I realized that I just had to become obsessed with business and not, even though I had some construction knowledge, a lot of us focus on the construction knowledge, which is really important to what we do. Um, but we're business owners that happen to focus in construction.
Yeah, I love that. Go ahead.
I was going to say, what would you tell the business owner, construction business owner who loves the craft, but is growing and learning in business? Like what would you say to them, in this phase? Because that's a lot of our listeners is people who are, starting out their construction businesses and they got into it because they love the craft. And they do excellent work, but the business side is a whole nother can of worms, if you will. And so what would you say to that person? You say you were obsessed with the business side and, is that what it takes, kind of to take the business to the next level from your perspective?
Well, yeah, if you want to take a business to the next level, you got to be obsessed with business. You need to be focusing on the business, not in the business, right? But to answer your point, Kenzie, I mean, the reality is some contractors may be like, I love having my bags on. I love being in the field. I love, not sitting behind a desk. And so that's fine. I mean, you can still do both. You just have to understand that if that's what you like, you need to hire someone that can be your C-suite executive, right? You need to be hire maybe a CFO that can run the financials and strategize to, different tax opportunities and understand how to put the systems in place that'll make your life better. Maybe you don't like marketing. Maybe you have someone that's running the social media and the business development and doing the sales, and then you can focus on the business. So you have to understand what you're passionate about, because the reality is in life and business is that if you're not passionate about it, you're not going to be good at it. And so if you're passionate about it, you're going to figure it out. You're going to work late, you're going to work the hours that it takes. You're going to figure out the continuing education, and then that's going to be your focus. And then the things you don't like to do, or maybe you feel like your time isn't as effective doing, you can subcontract that out, or you can hire it out, or, find a solution.
Yeah. What I heard from when you're answering about the early days, Brad, is I'm seeing that you didn't pretend in any of that too, which I love, where you're saying, if I'm going to get to the next level, you owned what you needed to do in order to do that, instead of just pretending like you were at that stage. And I feel like construction is one of those industries, well, probably any industry, but it's so easy to be like, yes, we can do whatever you need us to do. And then you get yourself backed into a corner and you realize, whoa, we actually can't. So that focus on being like, okay, to get to the next level, we actually do need to know what we're doing.
Yeah.
Well, I'm actually going to take it this way, because I think that's a great lead, is that there was a time when I started social media, right? So kind of around this time, social media, I'm becoming really active, because I'm like, okay, well, how do I get to the next level? How can I showcase my work, some brand recognition? So kind of as I'm getting to this point where I'm wearing a lot of hats, I'm frustrated. I don't know if I can make money. I'm starting Instagram. And so you can kind of create this, I call it persona, but the reality is there was a client of mine that I had done a remodel for, and they said, Brad, you do backsplashes? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, you should like market that you'll come and do a kitchen backsplash. And I'm like, I don't want to market that. I'm like, because the problem is, if I market that, people are going to hire me for that. And I started to realize that what I should be doing is marketing, maybe not where I'm in today, but where I plan to be in 5 years. And if I don't have a $20 million custom home in my portfolio, that's okay. I can at least show thought process of value and site cleanliness and what I bring to the table from a quality control aspect, to show that we have systems in place to get us there, that at least maybe 5 years from now, people are going to, get to that point. And so I quickly realized from that conversation with the client that I should always be marketing, not where I'm at today, but where I want to be in 5 years. And that really helped me to evolve as a business owner, to not just from a marketing strategy, but also from a sophistication of business level, to I need to really level up in how I run my business and understand these financials so that I can price better, which means I'm going to weed out these clients that probably can't afford me, but I should be working for them anyways. And that way I can have time availability for when the ideal client calls, and I have room in my schedule for them.
So good.
That's a great segue to the whole sales side. So when you qualify people, obviously you're building these, what's your minimum project size right now?
It's a great question. So I even tell clients, I'm like, I don't have a minimum square footage or value. I want to work for good people, but the reality has been, to answer that, and I do believe in that, I want to work for good people. There is, call it a line where, if it's under that, I just can't compete because of the overhead, the supervision. We're cost plus, we're open book. And so I would say right now, I mean, we really don't have a project under 2 million. I mean, I have one that's under 2 million, and it's for a repeat client that, is a good friend. But, with the level and size and, the amount of employees I have and the way we run our operation, it really doesn't make sense for the client. And I'll advise the client, hey, for this size project, we're not too good for you. Like, trust me, we're not. It's just, I know some peers that are operating at a self-performing level that are going to be a lot more cost effective for you. Your dollar's going to go farther. truth be told, I've done projects for 800,000, 1.1 million still. I don't have any right now, but in the last year I have.
Yeah.
And clients are willing to pay a little bit more, to have us do it. So I don't really have a minimum, but there definitely is a way that we
Yeah.
price ourselves out of that.
Yeah.
Sure.
So how do you qualify people? I guess all that to say, how do you get to the ideal client for AFT?
Well, early on, and you kind of alluded to this, I think I would chase any lead. Any lead, I'll do it. I'll drive out there, I'll figure it out. And then I'm like, oh, what a waste of my time. And now I'm like, I get to the numbers so fast. Typically it's fortunately because of the reputation we built and the network and the social media, we definitely have a more sophisticated client coming to us. It's more prepared. Our website does have a minimum square foot budget and it weeds out a lot of people. So typically the people coming are pretty strong candidates. Um, but even then, I find myself typically in the first 15 minutes getting to budget, even before they come into my office. And the funny thing about budget is a lot of times you'll push a client like, hey, client will call and I'll give my early days an example like, hey, bro, we want you to remodel our kitchen. I'm like, okay, well, what's your budget? Oh, I don't know. I want you to come look at it and figure it out. And,
Yeah.
it's a total waste of my time. And then I could say, okay, well, that's fine. My last client just remodeled their kitchen. They spent 245,000. And two things happen. One, they're gonna be like, "You're crazy!" Like, like I have $44,000 that I
Yeah.
want to remodel my whole kitchen, and I'm just like, "There's no way!" Like, I'm not getting cabinetry and countertops and appliances. Like, just not gonna happen. Or you some have clients that'll be like, even then, okay, yeah, that seems reasonable. Like, that's kind of within our expectation. Okay, well, now I don't want to say have the hook, but at least you can take it to the next step.
Sure.
Yeah, it's good.
And it's no different than a custom home. Like, hey, Brad, we really want to build, and I have some qualifiers. Like, is it a flat lot? Is it on a hillside? Is it in the farm? Like, I'll ask the city because Arizona is unique. That it's like, are we on farmland? Are we in the natural desert? Because that does impact, the code. It impacts, the building elements to the project. It impacts how much landscape. For example, like when I'm building on farmland, clients can put wall to wall of landscape and pool and amenities. They can't do that in the natural desert, because it's building envelope. So I just know the questions to ask so that I can quickly qualify them, and then I can throw out some budgets to them, and then they can be like, yeah, that's reasonable, or no way. Like, okay, I'll say you're probably like, $800 a square foot. And they'll be like, no way. Like, I want to build for 150. And I'm like, what? Yeah, it's not going to happen, but they may say, Brad, we really want to build at 650 or 725. And then I'm like, okay, well, I do have some projects that are built at that price. Here's, my portfolio. And if this is in line, and at least, there's definitely going to be some elements that we have to work through, but at least, we can get to some common ground.
You're just setting the expectation right up front of what the experience is going to be like working with you, which is really cool. Before you put any real time into it, you have this understanding with your potential customer of what to expect, which is really cool. I had this story early on. It's very similar, Brad. I started a remodeling business and I had this one prospect. And I remember going out there, same thing, can you do this? Well, what's the budget? Well, come and take a look. We don't want to be taken. It's basically what everyone feels
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
And this prospect, and she said, well, I want you to think of this job like you're doing it for your grandmother. And I was thinking, well, my grandmother's quite generous. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's very interesting of how you're educating the customers as well. I like that as well, that you're basically letting them know how things actually work. And so many times people don't understand how things are. You're the person that's be able to lay down the rules of how things are going to work.
Yeah.
What?
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I love that you said that, because one thing I've really realized, and this is really valuable, is there came a point, and I don't know the exact time, but there came a point in my career when you realize that you are the guide. Like you are the reason they're coming to you, and you have to set the tone. And whether it's schedule, whether it's budget, whether it's timeline, I mean, there's so many variables to go into where clients would be like, hey, I need to start at this date. I have a wedding coming up. I need to be in here by this date. And now I've realized you're coming to me on the expert. No, like, I know what it's going to take to build this home. And so here's the timeline. Like, this is what it's going to take. I set clear expectations. Here's the timeline. Here's the budget. Here's the reality. It can or can't be done. And clients are either going to like run, which is probably a good thing because their expectations are unrealistic, or they're going to be like, I trust you. If you tell me that's what it is, I can plan around that. I'll plan on that. And then we can live to it.
It's good.
That is good.
Yeah.
I can't remember my
No,
question.
Sorry, Kinsey, I interrupted you.
Oh no, I remember what it was.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm curious. So you're a sales guy, like you have grown the business, you've grown the brand, and you're excellent at sales. And I would say, like, just through our conversations, it seems like that's really where you thrive and, you know, have grown the business. How do you ensure the quality side of fulfillment when you're the one selling and others are fulfilling?
That's a great question. And so this goes back to that aha moment where you're like, I really need to have systems and people trained. And because too much of my career was you hire someone, I think they're like me. I think that they have the same understanding without communicating anything, which is like the worst way to be in a marriage or a friendship or run a business. I mean, it just doesn't work. None of us are mind readers. And I realize you can't just kick them off a pier and let them sink or swim. And so to answer that, what we've done, Kenzie, is we actually have these are really good team building activities. And so we have certain phases of construction that the entire company, office staff, accounting staff, field staff, we meet at someone's project and we punch the house. And so, before we drywall the home, especially towards the end at C of O, before the client turns it over, the expectations clearly set. The superintendent is the scribe, that there's no ego involved. They know that they're going to have 15, 20, 30 of their peers walk their home and with a fine tooth comb, and they're going to go through every detail. They're going to check the cabinets and run the appliances and run the dishwasher and, look at paint. And so we kind of separate, and the superintendent like gets a list, 8, 9 pages, maybe 2 pages, depending on, the project. But at least they have, from a quality aspect, we punched it with, 30 qualified AFT employees. And so we started these team walks early on. So one thing that's great is you have the team building, side by side working, trying to get this project. It's a known expectation. So no one gets their feelings hurt that something's not done. It's just part of the process. And then we're turning over a product that's, the quality is at a much higher level, which is our brand.
Yeah. Well, and it's training your team's eye too.
Mhm.
Like something which I love that about that too. That's cool.
Fantastic idea. So how many times are you doing that throughout a project?
At least 4. We
Okay.
typically have at least 4 per project. And to your point, Kenzie, is that what's nice is when you have, we have our project coordinators, right, that are typically in the office running 4 or 5 projects, and we have our accounting team. And so for them to be in the field and be like, oh yeah, this is what we're building, like this is what the brand we're representing, and here's the pain points that our field team has. It just there's something to be said about when you serve someone, and in a way this is serving that superintendent who's out there fighting those battles, that there's, there are bonds that are made, and then, they're trained on the level of quality and what we're looking for, and that we're, you know, not willing to give up on, and our trades understand that too.
Yeah, so good.
So how do you involve trades into that picture, Brad? I mean, so are you have this walkthrough, you're getting all this punch list together or action items of all these things that need to be done. How do you involve the trades as a part of your team?
Yeah, it just depends. I mean, the way we've done it now is that most of the time trades are not at the walk. I mean, we do one walk that's really imperative is before we run wiring in the home. So at the pre-drywall, of course, at the rough mechanical stage, we'll have the electrician come in and box the house. So they put in, all the boxes for switches and outlets, and they'll mark on the floors before they're installing any can lights, all the lighting throughout the home. And we do a walk with the low voltage electrician, designer, architect, and client. And the benefit is now, like if we want to move an outlet, no wires pulled. So yeah, we need to drop this outlet. We need to move this, still within code. We need to move these switches or these can lights because of mechanical or trim. We're figuring that out all in person if we haven't already up to that point. And so it just allows us a good point where there's going to be less change orders and frustration between the trades. But outside of that, like when we get into like finish stage, we're walking there and we're going to put together our list and we categorize it by trade. We categorize it by room. We use Bluebeam. And so we're taking pictures, and it's almost like a PDF where there's pictures with little bubble notes, and that gets sent out. So what's great is because everyone has an iPad, even though it's doing the field walk, they're taking pictures, they're doing the bubble notes. And so we kind of have this really organized file so the trades get, a visual document, they get an Excel document, and it's easy for them to go through and hit out the list instead of just putting blue tape on the wall that the trade can come pull. Like there's photos backup. So then that way they can't just pull the tape, they got to actually go do it.
Yeah, love it. Brilliant idea. Taking you back one more time. So the team building aspect, and one of the things we hear a lot, either from customers or people that we interact with in the trades, it is so hard to find good help. Like good help's tough to find, or and it's almost like it's this don't try almost is the way some people feel. If you want to do it right, do it yourself is kind of where people arrive so often. And it's almost this, I tried once and that was stupid. I'm not doing that again. Or I tried 5 times and it didn't work. And a huge critical part of you growing a business is be able to grow a team. And so from the first, I mean, you started hiring people. I mean, you really made your breakthrough 5, 6 years in and 11 years. So like halfway so far into that journey. Give us some secrets into building a great team and things you've learned as you've grown a team.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think it's easy to say if I want it done right, I'll do it myself. But if you speak to any successful business, person that's excelled in business or entrepreneur, I mean, they're always going to say if someone can perform your task at 60% of your capability, it needs to be delegated off, which it's hard to hear as an owner. You're like 60%. I mean, that's not even close to what I visualize as being performed. But the reality is there has to be things that are delegated and there has to be empowerment and there has to be training and there has to be confidence. And I've found in my career most of the times that there are mistakes in the field. It's easy to point the finger and be like, okay, Ben and Kenzie, like you totally messed that up. Like, okay, well, did you have the right resources? Did you have the right tools? Did you have the right management training? Did you have the right leadership? Are there scopes, gaps in our scope that's prevented you from excelling? And so I think a lot of this should be put internally. And I've realized that, the more I could put on me as far as that responsibility and accountability, and then I would take it a step further to create an environment where employees do feel that, I mean, they're day to day in the field, they're experiencing things I'm not in my role. And so to create an atmosphere where they feel that they can come to the table and voice concerns or better methods or better processes, and they're not going to just be shut down. And for me, look, I own right now 100% of AFT, and there's 31 employees. And in my past, it was easy for me being, I move quickly, I answer fast, like it's just kind of how I operate. And so people would come to me and get frustrated. Like we go to Brad and he like blows us off or he answers or gives us a question. And what I realized, some counsel that was given to me was like, you should have a leadership team. So I put together like a leadership council with different departments. And now we have a true org chart. Like I don't make any decisions without running them by my team. And so if someone in the field has a great idea, a great change, we run it by the leadership council. And then we figure out how to implement it, because part of this is too, is I would be the one traveling to a continuing education or seminar or conference, come back with some ideas. And it's like Tasmanian devil, I come in the office, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. And everyone's like, Brad, we're still trying to figure out the last thing you told us. And now you're giving us like 4 more tasks. So yeah, to answer that, it's just coming up with processes, having a sounding board team that's going to figure out how to integrate. And so as long as you have a visionary and as long as you have an integrator, then you can feel confident to empower and delegate, which then allows your business to go to the next level.
It's really good. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm curious. We talked a little bit the other day we had a pre-call, just about building a subcontractor team and I'm curious, early days, how did you build a great subcontractor team? How'd you find people that could fulfill the work? We talked about quality, obviously, in an earlier question, but just curious how you grew that. I know there's some listeners on our podcast who, are new in GC and, they're trying to build their subcontractor team. How many people per trade? How many, companies per trade, things like that. Do you have any tips for people who are growing their subcontractor team?
Yeah, I have a few. So early on, I had some relationships previously, so there was that. But I would drive around to like competitors' job sites and see what trucks, electrical trucks and plumbing trucks and who was the framer. And so I would, creep on them, if you will, and then write it down and then cold call them and try to get them to work for me. As I've matured though, and realized there's a better way is, it's funny, there's 2 parts of this. Well, there are actually 3 parts of this. One is social media is a great avenue. And many, I've seen some of my greatest trades from countertop to garage doors to others that are active on social media, which means they care about their business. They're trying to level up. And so we partner. So I found a lot of them through social media, which has been a great avenue. Or they've reached out to me. A second arm of that is I've gone to my really good trades, maybe my concrete guy, and said, hey, you're working all throughout town on these complicated projects. Who's the best framer that you've seen that's followed you? Who's the best earthwork guy that's kind of teed you up and set you up? And so I'd ask my trades, they're in the field. They know who's good. They know who has good superintendents and good foremen and good reputations. And so anyways, we would work through those options of getting referrals. And one last thing I'll say that's kind of a funny story is within reason, I would speak to my peers that I've built good relationships with, fellow GCs, about, hey, who's a good stucco guy you're using right now? Who's a good drywall guy? Who's a good plumber? Now you want to be careful. You don't want to ask for 20 of them. And there's a buddy of mine who I saw this morning, JD with Sticks and Bricks, who's a competitor. I mean, we don't compete a lot, but we're in the same, another general contractor building high-end production in Phoenix. And there was a young builder that reached out to him and said, hey, can I have your entire bid list? Like all your subs. And JD gave him the best answer. He said, do you want to date my wife too? Like, and so I think within reason, we have to be careful about not bringing value and not asking for everything. But there is value to calling JD saying, hey, JD, I'm having an issue with plumbing. Like, do you have a good plumber right now? And, collaborate. So within your peers, within the trades you're already using, I think there's a few ways to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. So one of the common threads that we've seen a lot is how much very successful business owners like yourself they value their team and they know how to build teams. And I in talking to you was like last week as we were kind of prepping for the show, and you just mentioned that was one of the things you just love about your job is the team and building the team and connecting with your team. And so walk me through that. Like, why do you come to work in the morning?
It's a good question. I think selfishly in construction is, I don't know. I think we picked probably the hardest industry in my opinion to do. Like, sometimes I think many of us want to pull our hair out. It's a very tough industry to do, but at the core, it's probably one of the most beneficial because like you can drive around town and say, I worked on that project. I was part of building that home or that hotel or that commercial building that people use. Like you actually see the fruits of your labors come to fruition and people and families move in and enjoy it and have memories and all these great things. And there is a lot of like self-fulfillment and satisfaction from that. But at the end of the day, these projects come and go, clients come and go. I look at my people, like what drives me and wakes me up in the morning to answer that. Like I love like my employees and hopefully they know that. I feel that they know that, but I care deeply about them and all that they do and their commitment to the company and their commitment to the brand and their commitment to quality and making AFT different than everybody else. And so when I sit in my production meetings that we'll have, once or twice a month, and you sit there with all 30 of them and you just see the livelihoods they're creating and you see their passion for it and them wearing the AFT gear, I don't know. For me, that's like the proudest moment I have. Sometimes I get emotional about it because it's like, I just care about them and I really appreciate, that is why I get up because I just love seeing what they're doing.
Well, yeah. So in all of that, how do you, with all of the life stories that are going on with all these different individuals, families and needs and all the rest of it, how do you stay engaged with that? How do you structure your time around your team? Because obviously 31 employees, you can't connect with everybody individually every week, but how do you make time for people? How do you connect with people when you have a team that size? How do you stay connected with your team?
I do try on occasion, and I could do better. I do try on occasion that I'll reach out to them, and it's always like, "How are you doing?" Right?
Mhm.
And you're just quiet, like, "How are you doing?" And not just calling them to say, "How's the schedule?" or "How's this progressing?" It's really checking on their mental health, and then having some good leadership teams, like I say, org chart, where they have some supervisors that are checking on them and staying in tune.
Yeah.
We try to do some company outings where I can talk to them and pull them aside and team lunches and we are separated throughout the valley. So, I think it's important that, and a lot of them understand. I know one of my employees this morning is like, hey, my wife's sick. I got to go take my kids to school. I'm like, do it. Like, you never have to question where I stand, like family first, like work will be here. And this really goes to the systems is I feel that like our systems are good enough that if one employee's gone or on vacation, they can actually turn their phone off. And so, mental health to me is important. And I tell them, make sure your phone's off at 5 p.m. or 6 p.m., make sure that, you're having that downtime when you're on vacation, that's handed off and that your punch lists are up to date so that we can cover you. And so part of it's ownership on them to
Mhm.
make sure their jobs are running like they should be so that when they leave, they don't have to deal with crisis mode.
So good.
Yeah. When did you guys arrive at that destination where you don't have this like always, pants on fire running around, between crises?
So how do we get to that point, you
Well,
mean?
I mean, guess like at what point did you get there? Then I guess maybe somehow too.
Um, it's interesting. I think there's a quote. Was it Jack Nicklaus? I can't remember. I think it's Arnold Palmer. Maybe it's like that road to success is always under construction, right? And
Mhm.
so it's one of those things that it's just you're never quite there. But I feel today, 11 years in, we're much different than we were yesterday, and we're much better than we were 4 years ago. So I think in general, it's like we are at a good place, but the how-to goes back. I mean, it's just really dedicating yourself to understanding your business. And what I mean by that is that, you know, if you understand as a business owner, from the minute I get that first phone call of, hey, Brad, build my home, to what it looks like till they move in and your service and warranty, if you really understand that journey, that emotional roller coaster, the ups and downs that happens, the pain points of the customer, if you know how this baton is passed throughout your organization, if you understand that fully, it does help you really understand how to build processes and systems and capture. And that's really the how-to is knowing, you know, how that baton is moved through the organization from front to back.
That's good.
So good.
Any other final questions from you, Kenzie?
No thoughts or no other questions. I'm curious, where can our listeners find you, Brad?
Yeah, so they can, if they look up AFT Construction, it stands for a finer touch, but AFT Construction on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok and aftconstruction.com, or they can look up Brad Leavitt on Instagram. I think Brad Leavitt and AFT will come up, or they can look up Brad Leavitt on LinkedIn or my podcast, because I have one too, you know, the Brad Leavitt podcast. So Brad Leavitt or AFT should pull us up on most platforms.
So good.
Thanks for making time for us. Any final thoughts? Any parting words of wisdom for us?
That's a good question. Yeah, I do have one. I mean, one thing that I think was taught early in my career is chase experience, not money. And, you know, early on when I graduated from college, there was an opportunity I had that it was definitely more experience than it was money. I was definitely underpaid in my role, but there was experience from, you know, just business and operations and construction itself, that anyone listening, if you can chase experience, and maybe this goes back to building your business. One of my first early projects, as I got to next level, I was able to work in the signature community of Phoenix and Scottsdale. And I was grossly underpaid to be the general contractor on this house. Like, I would look at this deal, they'd be like, there's no way I'm even looking at this. But I did it because it was experience for me, and I got my sign and name and reputation in there. Didn't make any money, probably paid the client for it. So I'm not the greatest investment, but the experience was, you know, you can't put a value on it. I mean, I have, you know, 5, 6 projects in that community now, which are signature projects, and it would have never happened without this one. So there's some value to loss leader, you know, in sales, or chase experience, not money.
That's good.
It's good stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, that's a wrap, guys. Thank you, Brad. Look forward to next time having you back if your schedule allows it. Thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, I'll see you guys later.
Thank you.